Hey, so you guys remember when I said that Yu-Gi-Oh was a soulless cash grab anime?
Bakugan kinda just blew up, especially in Canada. It was on par with Beyblade and Yu-Gi-Oh for soulless cash grab anime with really cool products.
I didn't really mean that, guys. I was just in a dark place emotionally. Jokes aside, I am a pretty huge Yu-Gi-Oh fan. Master Duel took over my life for a solid year, and it got to the point where I was neglecting school, so obviously, even though I'm gonna be ragging on the show, I still kinda have to respect the series. And especially this anime in particular, because I grew up with it. No, you didn't mishear me. I grew up with Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V. Is it Arc V or Arc 5? I'm not even sure. You know, I think most people expect you to grow up with one of the first 3 series, but nah, I guess I'm just built different like that. Out of the 8 Yu-Gi-Oh! Series that are out, this one is probably the second most controversial, mainly because people aren't a fan of the new art style, but I'm not even gonna touch that one. The point being that Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V doesn't exactly have the best reputation when compared to all the other series. Although at the end of the day, I am still a pretty huge fan. And no, it's not just because of the nostalgia, but because of some other factors too, like nostalgia. Oh, and before I start sounding too biased, I might as well mention this. Every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Series out there, yes, you too, GX, has flaws. But at the end of the day, they're all still pretty good. It's just that this one has the most and 0 redeeming qualities at the same time. Just kidding, that was a joke. Anyways, I hope you guys are ready to watch a guy who's almost an adult get mad at a TV show made purely to promote a children's card game. How did we go from we have to save our severely underfunded school to we have to prevent the 4 dimensions from merging? I get Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always been whack like that, like Vrains makes 0 sense and I'm the #1 Vrains glazer. But the thing is that the story gets worse as the plot gets more whack. Unlike GX, which has the exact opposite problem. Actually, that's not even a problem, that's why everybody loves GX. I mean, it's either that or Jaden getting depressed. The whole idea of there being 4 dimensions where each of them uses a specific summoning method is sick, but I feel was handled kinda poorly, mainly because of this guy, but then again. I'm gonna be real, the thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that you're not exactly watching for the plot, you're more invested in the characters and how they act. That's why even though a lot of the plot in GX was kinda whack, I didn't really care all too much. Maybe because I was watching the dub, I don't know.
I won't tell you his name, but it rhymes with Schmaden Schmooky. Hear me, Schmaden?
And I swear I'm not trying to discredit the plots in Yu-Gi-Oh! Stories or anything like that. I just think that the characters are infinitely more interesting, which in my opinion is a good thing, especially for the villains. My issue with this show is that they handle the characters in such an insulting way that it genuinely makes me mad. There's not exactly a way I can sugarcoat this, but when your main character is the worst part of your own show, you know you fucked up. Yuya is by far the worst Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist, and it's not even close. I'm saying this knowing I full well have not seen anything past Vrains. Maybe that's a little ignorant and I probably shouldn't be screaming that, my bad. His entire thing is that he wants everybody to be happy all the time. You guys remember that one episode of Gumball? The one where Alan was trying to make those happiness concentration camps? Yeah, I think Yuya would unironically support that. He isn't even subtle about this in the slightest. The smiling thing is shoved in your face all the time. The only thing that's on this guy's mind during a war is trying to make people smile, and that's kind of messed up. It's not too bad during the first season, but during the Synchro arc, I kind of wanted this guy to die. I mean, get carded. Seriously, man, every other dual-tainer in the show is infinitely more interesting than him. This means that the further we get into the show, he only becomes fun to watch when he's having a mental breakdown. And I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think we can agree that his counterparts are all way better than him. Unfortunately, this does not mean that they're treated with respect. To prove my point, Yuto dies in the first 30 episodes of a show with 150. Yikes. But to be real for a moment, he has a sick introduction with him using real monsters in a battle, and Phantom Knights are a sick archetype, so it just sucks when they kill him off so early. Then he becomes great value at Tem, and then he stays like that for the rest of the show. Yugo, on the other hand, is objectively the best character in the show, and I swear I'm definitely not biased or anything just because Speedroids are my favorite archetype and I use Crystal Clearwing over Barone any day of the week. He has one goal in mind, and that's to save his girl. And to do that, he has to defeat Yuri, which is why it's such a hyped up battle even in the openings. So when the fight comes and it gets interrupted and rushed, I kinda just wanted to kill myself. As for Yuri, I found him pretty cool and he should have stayed the main villain, and forcing him to be chill at the end was really dumb. I remember hearing that this dude's voice actor was expensive or something, but for a main rival, he barely shows up. Still, his duels are pretty sick. Like every other female character in Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yuzu gets done very dirty. I think the worst part is that the show kinda tricks you in the beginning, especially considering how much development she got in the first season. And then they proceeded to do literally nothing with her character. Gon Genzuka, like other Yu-Gi-Oh! Best friend characters, he kinda gets shafted. In fact, I almost forgot to put him in the video because he's not even in the script. I just kind of realized this while I was recording. Silvio or Shingo or Shithead, whatever you want to call him, I think he should have been the one to be the main character. You think I'm joking? I'm really not. He does the whole dual-taning thing without it being obnoxious, and he's actually funny. If the show is just about him being an annoying rich kid who grows into the main character role, then this show would be infinitely better. Instead, he's forced into being a side character who takes nothing but L's. And the same thing kind of applies to Selena. Here's a pretty fun idea. Just have her be the secondary protagonist. Maybe have her character fill a similar role to Rukia from Bleach, if that makes any sense. Look, if you get what I'm trying to say, it sounds cool. Why not make it so that she comes to the standard dimension for whatever reason and have her meet up with Silvio, who just discovered pendulum summoning, and then boom, the show is good. I don't like pretending that I could do more than the writers did and that my fanfiction is just infinitely better, but I get kind of annoyed when you shove a good character in my face and then do the bare minimum with them. See what I mean about the whole missed potential thing? Sora has the best duel in the entire show, but I do not like how quickly he becomes a good guy. Leo Wakaba is probably the worst villain in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! You might have heard this before, but yeah, his plan makes zero sense. He wants to merge the universes back to get his daughter, but he intentionally provokes Yuya knowing he's gonna turn into Zark, and then he thinks he can actually do something about it, and then he gets one shot. What did you think was gonna happen? It also doesn't help that all the returning characters are just infinitely worse versions of themselves. Alexis, Aster, and Crow are all so boring now. Kite and Jack are fine. Still a downgrade though. Not to mention that the show has too many characters and doesn't do much with most of them. Like, do you guys remember the Constellar guy, or the X-Saber dude, or the Gem Knight girl, or the Ninja guy? Seriously though, how did this dude get on the Lancers? At the end of the day, this is a Yu-Gi-Oh show, which means there's gotta be dueling in it. I mean, after all, how can they mess this up? It's literally a card game. Just have the characters have an interesting back and forth, and that's literally it. Oh yeah, action cards exist. I try not to remember that. To give this series an interesting twist, they made it so that the monsters they were fighting with had real mass. To be honest, I think that would have been enough, but no. Instead, we get action cards, which are cards that are hidden across the field, and if you find them, you get an advantage. Except all this does is lead to less interesting duels. Most of the time, they just get miracle or evade, meaning that the main character gets to survive another turn just in time to get that ultra thick plot armor. The first duel between Yuya and Silvio introduces action traps. This is such a sick idea because this means you can't just rely on action cards all the time, but they literally get phased out of the show entirely. The sheer amount of duels that Yuya has won simply because he relied on action cards is kinda insane. Also, this is just me going on a tangent, but when I first watched Arc V, I was really young and I thought that action cards actually existed in real life. Like, when the duel started, people would throw the cards around the room, and like while you were dueling, you would pick them up, and I was like 8, can you really blame me? Honestly, even if you do ignore the action cards, a lot of the duels in the show are just kinda mid. Like, some of these did not need to be 2 episodes. Not gonna lie, after watching Zexal, I kinda had high expectations for the animation in the show, and honestly, at the beginning it was kinda alright. In fact, sometimes it got really good. Still, the CGI models of some of the monsters in the show kinda look whack, especially Odd Eyes. But the minute you get to season 3, the animation kinda just seems to tank. Like, every now and then, the characters kinda just look whack, and they move in really awkward ways. I don't know if I'm finding the right clips, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. Alrighty, here's just some general complaints I had with the show, starting with why the fuck did this duel need to be 2 episodes? And does anybody else think that it's a little weird that in the 6th opening of the show, Yuya shows off Odd Eye's Raging Dragon as if it's something that fits with his smile aesthetic? It does not. Oh, and you guys remember the other bracelet girls? Well, if you do, I should give you an award, because honestly, I didn't. They have 0 character whatsoever. Yippee! And I know this was also kind of an issue in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, or more just like a nitpick a lot of people had with the show back then. That also applies to this show, is that no matter how you look at it, going to a school for dueling is kinda whack. And you know it's a private school too, so you're paying money to get into these courses. Imagine you pay money for your kid to take an XZ summoning course and they fail. This just means it was a little hard for me to take it seriously when Yuzu was training so hard to learn how to fusion summon.
Did you make sure to put your monster in your extra deck?
Huh? My extra deck?
Are you stupid? I don't really care about ritual summoning, and honestly, I don't think Konami does either, but why is there no ritual dimension? And let's be real here, the show did not need to go on for another 8 episodes after Zark is defeated. I'm pretty sure if you've known about this series, you've probably heard about this before. The ending for this show is amazing with how bad it is. Drugs are bad, but if I could get a hit of whatever the writers were smoking, that would be great. The show ends with the Dimension Boys and the Bracelet Girls essentially dying, and nobody brings it up. Shun is smiling that his sister and his best friend are literally dead. Kinda messed up, bro. I don't mind that they're dead. I think too many people die in Yu-Gi-Oh! And then come back. The crazy part to me is that literally nobody reacts. In fact, it's kinda worse than death because they're kinda just like inside of their heads, which sounds kinda scary, not gonna lie. But as for the actual duel itself, it's dedicated to Yuya, you guessed it, trying to make somebody else smile. Which, I mean, fine, I guess it is his like main character trait after all. The duel itself is fine, but I think the show kinda ruined the concept of smiling for me. Personally, I would have just ended the show after the Zark duel. Normally when I talk about something good, I talk about the bad stuff last. So that means now I'm gonna have to talk about the good stuff in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V. And unlike in my Bakugan video, this time there's actually quite a bit. For starters, all of the decks used in the show are pretty cool. You got your Pendulum Magicians, Odd Eyes, Performapal, Performage, Phantom Knights, Speedroids, Predaplants, Gem Knights, Raid Raptors, Super Heavy Samurai, Frightfur, DDD, you get the point. The show also does a really good job at introducing summoning mechanics to the newer players. Whenever I saw people complain about pendulum summoning being so difficult, I never really understood because Yuya explains it in literally every episode. I can summon monsters between the levels 2 through 7 all at the same time. Forgot to mention them, but Dennis and Shun are also really good characters. Speaking of Shun, him and Sora have arguably the best duel in the entire series. Oh, and the music in the show is really fire. Not just the background music, but also the openings. Opening 4 has no reason to go that hard. I would play it for you, but obviously I can't. The English opening though, like, aw man. Yeah, it's corny, but to be honest, every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Opening is corny. Even the first one. Except Vrains, they didn't even try, and I'm the #1 Vrains glazer. Speaking of the English dub, Yuya has the exact same voice actor as Clement from Pokemon. Yeah, that's it. I kinda just thought that was cool. Not much to say here, to be honest, although I get the feeling I say that in a lot of my videos. Which isn't saying much because I don't have that many. I think the show can be described in 2 words. Missed potential. Whenever I see somebody say that Zexler 7s is the worst Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, I genuinely get surprised. At the end of the day, I am still a pretty huge Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V fan, but even I can recognize that the show is very flawed. For what was supposed to be a celebration of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, it really didn't do all too much and was mid at best if I'm being real. Moral of the story, just read the manga. Wait, I can't really say that now,